Welcome back to How to Craft Fair. This is episode number 19 in the How to Become a Craft Fair Vendor series. Today we're going to be talking about what to do after every craft fair. So one of the most important things that you can do as a craft fair vendor is to analyze the show that you just got done with. You never want to just jump right into the next event without doing some analysis and assessments on the fair that you completed. So this video is going to be pretty jam-packed with a lot of tips. So without further ado, let's go ahead and just jump right in. All right, so the obvious place to start here is to assess your sales. To make it easier, I've created a craft fair sales sheet on my Etsy shop. I'll drop the link in the video description in case you're interested in that. But regardless of how you do it, you definitely want to keep track of every single item that you sell throughout the day. So to go along with that, you should now take a look at what were your overall earnings compared to what you paid to participate in this event. Now, you should try to factor in as much as you can as far as your expenses, things like gas money, obviously the booth fee, right? Any kind of percentage that you had to forfeit. So some craft fairs will actually require vendors to give a portion of their sales to the event organizer. Any kind of raffle items, so there's a value on that as well. So you really just need to kind of factor in every single expense and then compare it to what you made and then figure out, that'll give you an idea of if it was worth it or not. Another thing that you should take a look at that's relative to your sales is what items sold the most and what items sold the least. So you should always be trying to identify trends at your booth and figure out what those hot items are so that the next time you have an event, you can maybe dedicate a little bit more of your booth and your space towards what's hot. So factor this into consideration as well when reflecting upon your sales. Okay, now the next thing you should do is an inventory assessment, and there's pretty much two elements to this. Now, you have to think about, did you create enough inventory leading up to the event? And then did you bring enough inventory to the specific event? Okay, so those are definitely two different things. You might have enough at home, but did you pack enough? Or, vice versa, did you not have enough in the first place and that left you pretty much dry at the event? One of the things that people tend to brag about at events is that they sold out. And while it's good to have a hot booth with a lot of items going, selling out means you basically didn't bring enough inventory, okay? So don't leave yourself missing out on an opportunity to cash in on even more sales by simply not bringing enough inventory. Okay, now this next tip is a little bit of a long-term tip, and you should always be tracking your sales at events, right? That's pretty much a given. But another thing that you should keep track of at every event that you participate in was the attendance. So how many people actually came through. The organizer should be able to provide you with this. And if they don't voluntarily, you can just kind of like ask them in an email as like a follow-up. Do this in a nice way, not that you're kind of like accusing them of bad or low attendance. Just say, you like to do it for your sales purposes to kind of keep track of events and whatnot. But anyways, keep track of your sales and then keep track of the attendance and start to identify trends and see if it takes a certain attendance in order for you to reach your sales goals. Okay. So you can use this to your advantage when signing up for events, and a lot of times the organizer will publish some kind of an expected attendance, and then that way you can look back and see if you have events of a similar size to determine whether or not the event is worth signing up for. Okay, so again, this is kind of like a long-term game plan, but it's a tip that it takes a lot of work to execute, but it can really, really work to your advantage to figure out if events are worth signing up for or not. And then finally, when it comes to inventory, you should always be calculating how much you'll need to restock after an event. Okay, so take a look at that craft fair sales sheet, determine everything that you've sold, and then that's going to give you an idea of how much you'll need to replenish before your next event. Okay, so that's just going to keep you it's going to keep you like ahead of the game, okay? Because if you start to fall behind during a craft fair season and you've got a long ways to go before you hit your off season and your inventory is dwindling, that can be a really, really stressful situation, because not only now do you have to worry about just, simply planning for events and attending the events and everything that goes along with that, but then now you're trying to restock all your inventory and it can be impossible to catch up sometimes. So just keep an eye on it after every event, and then that way it's kind of like a slow trickle of effort instead of like this monumental thing that's going to be overwhelming for you. All right, now this next assessment is goals. So did you set any goals leading up to this event? Did you accomplish any? And then also consider whether or not you should be adjusting your goals based on how well you performed at the last event. So did you completely blow them out of the water where now you can set your goals even higher? Or were the expectations a little bit unrealistic and you should, maybe knock the goals down a little bit? It's okay to tweak things around. Goals are goals, and, whether you accomplish them or not, the point of them is to motivate you. So as long as it's doing that, I think, you're going to have some success. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, okay, like what kind of goals can I set for a craft fair? I have a few examples that I can toss your way and maybe, give you some inspiration on goals that you can set for your next show. So, of course, the basic ones are, a goal for a certain number of items being sold or a certain dollar amount of sales at your booth. Okay, so you can pretty much do it either way, by the number of items or the dollar amount sold at your booth. You can also do things like maybe you have a certain number of contacts that you want to add to your email contact list. That could be a really nice goal to set to, make sure that you're expanding your marketing opportunities at every event. Okay, a lot of vendors these days have QR codes. So maybe you have a QR code that links to your social media, and maybe one of your goals is to have like 10 new followers after an event, something like that. Another thing that you should consider doing at every craft fair is to network with your fellow vendors. So maybe you could set a goal that's like you collect 5 business cards and exchange 5 business cards with fellow vendors. And then there's a couple of goals that you can set regarding your booth. So one of those goals could be identify at least one specific improvement that you can make to your booth at your next event. Another goal could be to time how long it takes for you to set your booth up and try to make that a goal where you can accomplish that setup time. So these are just a couple of ways that you can kind of think outside the box and create some goals that maybe aren't just number specific and figure specific. And you can set goals that aren't necessarily just sales based, okay? So there's always a whole bunch of different ways that you can motivate yourself at a craft fair. Just do what's going to work best for you and motivate you the most. Now, there's one thing that every single craft fair has in common, and that's that they have an organizer, okay? So an event host, an event organizer, whatever you want to refer to them as, there's always somebody that's putting on the event. So you should definitely have an analysis that's related to the organizer. And one of the things that you can consider is how was their communication leading up to the event and during the event? Do you feel like you got adequate communication from the organizer? Did you pretty much have a good idea of what you were getting yourself into before the show? Now, another thing to consider is, do you feel like the organizer was prepared to host the event? Did they seem like they were well put together and composed and calm and confident? Or did it seem like they were running around and scrambling and didn't really have themselves put together? So definitely consider this. This is really a make or break trait for a good organizer or not. And this is definitely something that you should consider if you're going to think about attending the event again. All right, now this one is always at the forefront of every vendor's mind. How was the organizer's advertising? Okay, so that's one of the biggest things that the vendors demand from an organizer and request from an organizer is that they advertise well. So think about how they advertised. See if they publish their advertising. Like, so some organizers will actually let vendors know how they plan on advertising. Ask if you can get involved if you want to do the event again, because, well, first of all, organizers love this. And a lot of times it opens up opportunities, so some organizers, for example, they have a bunch of yard signs made. And if a vendor wants to put a sign in their yard in the weeks leading up to the show, that's great. A lot of times they'll love that, so sometimes there's ways that the vendors can get involved too, but definitely do an assessment on how you feel they advertise the event. And then to go along with that, you should also consider how the attendance was for the event. So, was it jam packed? Was it kind of in the middle, or was it just completely desolate like a ghost town? So, consider that, of course, when trying to decide if you're going to return to this event or not. Now, another thing that you can do to analyze the organizer is to take a look around the event and figure out how many competing vendors there were that are in your niche. Okay. So, was there, for example, if you make soaps, was there like 7 soap vendors in a craft fair with 40 booths? These kind of things can be a little bit of a red flag for an event organizer. Maybe they don't have a lot of vendors signing up for their events, so they're pretty much just taking anybody that they can get. Just weigh this into your decision on how you feel about the organizer. Okay, so this is one of the more important things that vendors take into consideration when it comes to, is the organizer a high quality organizer or not. Vendors don't want to sign up for events where there's just a whole ton of competition within a few niches, so look for organizers that spread out shows as evenly as possible. And there's always going to be a little bit of overlap. Okay, so just for example, like woodworkers, that's a pretty common niche in craft fairs. Same thing with like textiles, so people that do like crochet and things like that. There's going to be some overlap, and as long as they take the vendors and they spread them out at the event, I think that's kind of like the best that they can do. You know what I mean? As long as they're not absolutely drowning one particular niche. Okay, and then finally, a really good trait of a good organizer is that they will send all of their vendors a follow-up email just to kind of recap the event. A lot of times this is when they'll disclose the official attendance to all the vendors, but it's kind of just like a nice closing of the event. Sometimes the organizers will send out a survey to the vendors, and this is really important. If you happen to get one of these from the organizer, please take the time to fill it out, okay? There's a reason why they're putting this together. There's a reason why they're asking you, the vendors, to fill this out. It's kind of like it's really a vulnerable position for the organizer to send these out. They're really kind of exposing themselves to some heat if they didn't do something well, okay? But the reason why they're doing it is because they know that your opinion matters. The vendors are the event. I mean, it's the organizer's show, but it's the vendors that are the show, okay? So your opinion really matters. If you get one of these surveys, please take the time to fill it out. If the organizer does not send out one of these surveys, I would still recommend that you take a few minutes to provide some balanced feedback and keep it balanced. Even if it's a pretty rough event, try to find some silver linings and keep it as level as you can. When it comes to the criticisms or tips on how to improve the event, try to deliver them in a way where it shows that you care about the show and you want the show to succeed, especially if you plan on working with this organizer again, okay? And even if you don't, you never want to burn any bridges in the craft fair community, because first of all, you're probably locked into a specific zone of like 50 or 100 miles. I mean, typically most vendors are in that like 1 hour driving circle, and then that's about it. So in that circle, there's only a certain amount of event organizers, okay? So again, when you're offering feedback, try to have like constructive feedback that provides like some solutions or, maybe some suggestions along with pointing out things that maybe didn't go as planned, okay? But that's about it. So again, assessing the organizer is a really, really big key to, of course, figuring out if you want to come to this specific craft fair. But really, it gives you insight on what to look for in all organizers, okay? So you can use these past experiences with former organizers to seek out organizers that you'd really like to work with because they have traits that you've experienced before. Now, this next tip is very, very easy to overlook, okay? So vendors are so data-driven and analytical. And it's easy for us to look at the numbers and say, well, I didn't like this show because of, I didn't hit a certain sales mark or some kind of like tangible number. Okay. But this next tip is to put value on the invaluable. Ask yourself questions that don't involve data and listen to your gut and listen to your heart. Okay. So ask yourself questions like, are you happy that you attended the event? Just something as simple as that. Did you have a good time at the event? And then did you meet any new friends or any networking people that you're excited about? These are the kind of questions that are not revolving around data that, again, we sometimes kind of forget about. So this is basically as equally important as those data points that we just so commonly focus on. So don't forget about these basics. Are you happy with the show? Are you glad that you went? Did you have a good time? Did you meet anybody that, you can potentially have like a working partnership with or anything like that? So these are things that you should definitely be taking into consideration as well. Okay, and this next tip is to send out your thank yous. So the first thing that you want to do is to post on your social media pages a photo of you at your booth. And in the morning, after you've set your booth up and it's all pretty and it's kind of untouched and undisturbed by all the people coming in, have a fellow vendor take a picture of you with your booth. Okay, not just the booth, not just you with your booth. Okay. And do the same for them, by the way. So, if you ask a fellow vendor to, snap a picture of you, please return the favor. But have this as your photo that you post on social media, and then say something like, hey, thank you for stopping at my booth. And that it makes it personal. First of all, they see your face, they see your booth, they see your brand, you representing your brand, and it's coming from you, just a nice thank you to all your followers. And that's great. So the people that came to the event are going to appreciate that. A lot of times you'll get some nice comments on there like, hey, I came to the booth and I bought this and it was awesome. So you'll get those kind of comments, but then you'll also probably get comments from people that are like, damn, I forgot the event was today, and they'll want to come to your next show, So that's why you always want to do these follow-up posts, because it gives appreciation to the people that stop by, and it kind of throws a lure into the water for the people that maybe will come next time. Okay, then while we're talking about the thank yous, like I said before, you want to thank the event organizer. Of course, you had a big day, but they had a really, really big day. They had dozens, maybe hundreds of vendors, and there was a lot of lead up that went into this event, so they had a really big day too. And keep in mind that they entrusted you to be a part of their big day. Okay, so I think a lot of times vendors kind of forget about that, where they're excited to be like at a show and stuff like that, but like really the organizer is essentially putting their reputation on the line by having all of those vendors at the show, all those different personalities and things like that. So, again, they're entrusting you to be part of that event, and just let them know that you appreciate it. And it's going to go a long way with the organizer. Okay, and then also another thank you that you should consider doing is that if you obtained some new email contacts for your contact list, send them some kind of a short and simple email, and be sure to, of course, say thank you, for, signing up for your email list and whatnot, and coming to your booth and stopping by your booth at the event. But don't use a template for this. Okay. So don't have like something that's like a draft that you just kind of reuse over and over. Keep the email short and sweet, but customize it to this specific day. Okay. So whether you mention like the event name or like, I don't know, the date, or maybe you include like your booth picture, that would be kind of cool. So do something that shows that, okay, this was written today. It's about today. It's not some like, automated generated thing. But another thing to consider is that if you have multiple people that you're emailing, be sure to use the BCC, the blind carbon copy, okay? And if you don't know what that is, basically it keeps everybody's emails private from one another. And the way that you can use this is in the to line, where you would normally put the email address for who you're sending it to. don't put them there. Put your email in the to line, so it basically sends it to yourself, and then put all the other email addresses in the BCC line so that, again, everybody's emails are confidential and hidden from one another. This is just a good habit to get into whenever you're, doing a mass email to, newsletter people or whatever. You always just want to use that blind carbon copy. Okay, so finally, what you want to do is to combine your gut feelings with those tangible numbers that we talked about and make a decision on your future based on those two elements combined. So this is the full reflection of the craft fair, okay? What you want to do is to identify the most important aspects of the craft fair for you. And this is going to be different for everybody. So some people might have those tangible numbers and those sales goals, and that's what's important to them. Other people, it might be more so like the networking and building up the contact list and things like that. So whatever is most important to you for a craft fair, think about that list of desires and goals. And did you check off all the things on that list, or at least most of them? All right. So if you decide that you know that you want to return to this show as a vendor, be sure to contact the event organizer as soon as possible and let them know that you want to get back in. A lot of times registering early can come with a lot of perks, such as discounts on booth or better booth placement, or they might even let you pick your type of booth. So as soon as you've decided that you want to return, or even if it's a new event, okay, one that you're kind of scoping out and you want to participate in, get in as early as you can, okay? It helps with your scheduling. It helps with your preparation, with your inventory. There's so many benefits to signing up early, okay? So again, I hope that this video was helpful. There was a lot of tips on, reflecting back on craft fairs. Like I said, there's a lot that goes into preparing for a craft fair, but there is quite a bit after the show too, okay? So use this information to make better decisions for yourself and your business, and I hope it helps you out. This was episode number 19 in the How to Become a Craft Fair Vendor series. There's only one episode left. It is the big grand finale. You don't want to miss it. Be sure to click on this playlist above to check out all the videos in the playlist, and thank you so much for watching.